One thing I have to restore is the act of going to a grocery store and doing my own shopping, because Instacart, though I love the convenience, they really wear me low with these replacements. Now, mama, if I ask you for a whole wheat bagel, why in the hell did you bring me Thomas English muffins? I didn't ask for a fucking nook and cranny. Yo, what's going on? This is the Kevin Duane podcast, and I am Kevin Duane. Thank you for joining me for another episode. First things first, congratulations to President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris for securing your spots and getting that angry man out of office. The world is breathing easier. There's still lots of work to do, but this is definitely a moment of victory. At least it feels that way in this present moment. And I could not continue the show without saying that. Last week's election was stressful because it was one of those things where, because we've celebrated too quickly before, and we had the disappointment of like losing. So last week was stressful because we didn't know which way it was going to go. And then even when it felt like it was going to go our way, we know that anything can happen to switch shit up. So when we finally we surpassed the 270 electoral votes, it was like, okay, we can breathe. We're good. We're celebrating. So Saturday was fun. I'm in New York, so just seeing all the energy and hearing it and the joy and the unity, that was nice. That was very, very nice. And that's literally all I can say about that, because the last, I'll say, week and a half has been so transformative for me. And this is definitely not about election stuff. This is more or less today's message. And I don't want to waste any time with fluff to make the episode seem more fun or whatever. I literally just want to get to the heart of what's been on my mind for the last week and a half, because it was life-changing. And I hope that me telling my story can somehow relate to you, the listener, and you can use it in your own life. And it kind of comes down, I mean, it's about family, but it really comes down to empathy, like true empathy, the real deal, literally putting yourself in someone else's shoes and understanding where they're coming from and how they're feeling and identifying with them, like just that whole idea. And yeah, so let me just explain. So last week I spent some time in California with my family. I don't know what episode it is or if it's a series of episodes, but I talk about my views on family and my own personal gripes in previous shows. And it pretty much stems from how I was raised and also the aftermath of my guardians passing away in 2012. I was raised by my aunt and uncle, which is my biological mother's sister. Okay. She raised me from birth. The details on how that happened are sketchy. As you know, with stories, you have to like get bits and pieces from different family members, and none of them seem to line up. So I'm not sure of the exact details. And that does kind of bother me, because you have to rely on people to tell you the truth. And I'm not saying that my family is lying, but when people tell they tell from their perspective. So when you get multiple views, sometimes those perspectives don't line up. All I know is I ended up with my aunt and uncle, and they raised me as their own. That is the key point here. They gave me shelter. They fed me. They made sure I got a proper education. They worked on, my character building and my values. They were, for all intents and purposes, my parents. Point blank, period. Okay. So when they passed away in 2012, shit got real. I mean, it's life. It's what happens. So I fell out with family members, specifically their children. I won't even say that. I'm not even going to make this a thing. Let me keep this as truthful as possible. I fell out with my cousin / sister. So my aunt's daughter. Okay. We fell out, and it was just a lot of misunderstanding. A lot of emotions were flying all over the place because our shared mother, factually, my aunt and her biological mother passed away, but because I was raised by her, she was my mother. So just so you can have an idea of what we were dealing with. So dealing with finances and just issues like that. We couldn't see eye to eye, and it caused a divide. I moved out of LA, and it wasn't because of her. It was because of when my parents passed away, I had great fears. That was my nest. All of a sudden my safety net was gone, and I had to figure out life for myself. So I always wanted to move to Atlanta and start a new life, as they say. And I did. It actually worked in my favor. That's why I don't get the hatred towards moving to Atlanta to start a new life, because I did. It worked for me. It was great. So I moved to Atlanta, started working for Coke, started my photography business, just lived my own life, built new friendships, cultivated the ones I already had, and literally became a man in Georgia. And life went on. It's been 8 years since the passing of my mother, father, and grandmother, or since that whole thing happened. And a lot has gone on since then, to say the least. But lately, especially with getting older, I talked about on I won't say the first episode, but a couple weeks ago, I talked about resetting and looking at life differently and just seeing the world differently in perspective. Well, family has been a thing that's popped back up recently for me. At the top of the year, I was feeling very down about my connection to my family. I'm like, I want more from my family. And I know it's going to take me to extend the olive branch. Not necessarily that the onus isn't on me per se, but at the same time, somebody has to start it. Somebody has to get you there. So it started off with like a phone call, like, hey, let's just talk, let's figure this out, let's do that. And then my nephew mentioned he was getting married. This is before COVID. And I was like, oh, that's perfect. That's a perfect opportunity for me to get around family, extend the olive branch, push things forward so that we can unite more often. We can get together. We can have family reunions. We can do things and at least start it, because my family, like I said, no family's perfect. My family has a lot of brokenness in it, a lot of pathology, a lot of things swept under the rug. And it's just really painful and frustrating to deal with hands-on. But for us to get to a better place, we have to. We can't keep avoiding it. So I was looking for an opportunity to get back in with my family. So my nephew was getting married, and he was like, I would love for you to be there. And I was like, I would love to be there. Now, let me also clarify that when I say my nephew, I actually mean my cousin. On factual record, because this, once again, is my cousin's son. But because I saw her as a big sister, I saw him as my nephew, but he's actually my cousin. All right. So my cousin was getting married, and I was like, okay, I'll be there. COVID hit, changed everything, pushed weddings out, canceled weddings, all that stuff. So I'm like, okay, now what? What do we do with this? So fast forward to a couple weeks ago, I was actually set to do something else last week. And then my cousin / sister hit me up and was like, hey, my son's getting married. He really wants you there. I don't know if you can be there because of all that's happening. It's going to be a small private thing at a winery. There's only 10 of us. We have to get tested for COVID. Yada, yada, yada. But I'm just letting you know. And I was like, if he's getting married, I will be there. If he says I can have one of those spots, I will be there. Called him. He said, absolutely. I would love for you to be there. So he made sure that I could be one of the 10 people there. I was extremely honored and excited because I'm still processing on, I guess, family acceptance as far as how I look at it and if I care or not. But in that moment, I just felt seen by a family member and it felt really good. And I was really excited to finally, get to congregate, even though it was going to be a COVID wedding. It was going to be just 10 of us. So it was literally their intermediate family and the bride's intermediate family. That was it. Like it was very, very efficient, but it wasn't the entire family, but it was enough to start the process, right? So I was like, I'll be there. So I found me a suit. I, coordinated that shit, did the whole thing. So flew out to California. My sisters, so when I say my sister / cousin, just so it's not completely confused, I'm going to go ahead and just say sister from now on. Just understand she is my sister. Biologically, she's my cousin, but understand from how I see my upbringing, she's my sister. All right. So she picked me up from the airport. It was dope. She bought me an In-N-Out burger. And she made sure it was lettuce wrapped in our bread because I try not to eat bread. I just like little shit like that where she just bought me some food. Like, oh, it was like that feeling of like, oh, you're looking out for me in a way that just that familial feeling. And that was like cute. So then we ended up going and shopping a little bit and hanging out with my nephew who was still getting things ready for his wedding and stuff like that. Okay. So night one, because I was out there for a few nights. Night one, I don't know what happened. Maybe just the universe aligned the way it should have aligned and I manifested exactly what I wanted. But me and my sister had a very honest heart-to-heart right then and there at her living room table. And it was literally it was a beautiful moment. Like I was able to look her in the face and talk about certain things that were bothering me. She told me what bothered her, but it came down to the fact that we still love one another. We still care for one another and we're family no matter what, no matter if we disagree or whatever, we're still family. And we can work through things by seeing each other as human, And so we hugged and we made up in that sense. And it was a sense of peace, but I knew there was still work that needed to be done. Right. So then she and I started to just have a conversation about, how she grew up. Because she is about 18 years older than me, give or take. So she was, I don't want to say grown. Black people love to say 18 is grown. 18 is not grown. But she was an adult in the eyes of the law when I was born. Okay. So there's a huge difference. So there's a whole life that I didn't even get to see. So, there was that. So I hope I'm not being offensive, and I hope that she doesn't find offensive this because I didn't necessarily ask permission to tell the story. And I'm not going to spill tea, but just the basics that make this story make sense. Okay. So I got to hear some of her point of view and I realized I hadn't considered it before. I hadn't considered it. So she was telling me some things that she experienced growing up. And then I remember, I think it was the next day after we had our moment together, the next day I was just sitting in the living room. We had some downtime. She and I had went shopping and we were just kind of chilling. The wedding wasn't until I think 2 days later. And she was kind of doing her hair and doing her whole thing. And I was just in the living room chilling, watching TV, vibing out. What I love about being able to go, this is a side note, traveling and going to family's house, going to friend's house. I love when, even though I'm not at my own house, I can still chill and do my own thing elsewhere. If you allow me to do that, I'll love you forever. So the fact that I was able to have my own alone time while still in the presence of my sister was actually really great. So I was sitting there chilling and I don't know, it was like a cloud removed itself from my vision. And all of a sudden this clarity came and I realized I was never empathetic of my sister. Like I said, I don't want to expose any of her story to the point that it would be scandalous. But what I will say is a lot of times my sister was written off for her temper And she was often called crazy and hard to deal with, difficult. And here's the thing. Some of her actions do show this. But here's the thing. I never saw the why she was that way. I was always looking at the outcome because that's how I was socialized by my family to look at her. You know, she was already 18 when I was born. So when she had a breakdown, or when she went off, or when she did some crazy shit, it was like, oh, well, you know, that's just how she is. You know, she's crazy, you know, She got problems. But I never thought about what those problems were. I never thought about what they stemmed from. I never even considered it because I was too fucking close to my own personal privilege. So the shit that broke me open was the idea. Okay. Like I said, I've been sitting on this since I've been back. And when I say it out loud, I think it makes it even crazier. So the thing that I never considered that made me feel like a fucking asshole, like I felt like I'm still processing the guilt of it, but I never considered that I was raised, right? I was raised very privileged. What I mean, like, as far as like my upbringing, like spoiled, sent to private schools, nurtured, coddled, all of that shit. I was given all of that, but my sister wasn't. My sister and her older brother were abandoned by the very people that raised me. And I won't say people because my uncle wasn't included in that. My aunt married my uncle later on, but my aunt was a young parent. Didn't consider this, you guys. I was too close to it. This was my mother. She was romanticized to me, and she still will be romanticized to me because she's my mother. She took care of me. There'll always be respect there. But I never saw the humanness of my mother / aunt, the one who raised me, and my sister / cousin. I never realized that my aunt had kids when she was young, and because of pathology and situations, she actually abandoned them. Like, she didn't raise them. Like, they kind of were raised by the streets. Not kind of, they were raised by the streets. They were kind of left to their own devices as kids. And if I'm being honest, I kind of became a redemption child when I was born because she put everything into me. And I know I had no choice in that, but at the same time, I was so privileged in that I didn't empathize with my cousins who were abandoned by the same mother who raised me. That shit broke me open. It naturally caused me to fall into I can't say a depression, but it made me kind of question my character. Now, I know we all arrive to things in our own time, and that may have been my moment to arrive to it. I will certainly ask in therapy to try to break this open. But even talking to close friends, they're like, well, it wasn't your time to see it, but now you see it. And it was my biggest struggle was like, how do I call myself an empath or even identify as one? How do I'm able to identify with the problems and issues of strangers, of people I don't know, and easily be like, damn, I can imagine how that feels, while literally ignoring my cousins who have been protesting my entire life that their upbringing they were neglected. They were fucking neglected. And all they wanted was to be seen. So I had to sit there. I sat there and I was like, I was brought to tears because I was like, fuck, like, how did I not see this? Like, I was that close to the problem that I couldn't, like, there was no way. Like, I'm still processing. I'm still processing because I was literally like, she was there. So I think in my mind, I misunderstood my sister's connection to my mother, my cousin's connection to. I feel like by me doing this, I'm confusing you guys more. So let me just my cousin's connection to my aunt who raised me. Bam. I misunderstood it. I guess I foolishly assumed that she was raised by her, but it just was those mother-daughter bonds that just wasn't the best. Like, they just had issues between each other. They couldn't figure it out, and that was between them. I never took into account that my cousin was abandoned as a 7-year-old. I never really empathized with the idea because I guess I didn't understand it. I was too young to understand it. But now I understand it, and it makes me, I won't say furious, but just frustrated at just all the different situations, because I don't think anyone is inherently bad. I'm not going to bad talk my aunt because evolution is possible. She evolved. She saw life differently. She was older. She took me in. She raised me. She helped raise my nephew. So she evolved, she matured. We all mature, we make better decisions with what we have. So there's that. But at the same time, all that pain and things that my cousin had to deal with growing up, only for people to tell her that she was just crazy, get over it, figure it out, move on. When in reality, she just wanted to be seen and she just wanted to feel like a daughter. And she never got that. She never got that. So my heart began to weep for her because I was like, damn, we foolishly and ignorantly have ignored you all these years and just wrote you off while you have been dealing with immense pain of neglect and abandonment because a lot of other things happen. Like I said, this is not me here to spill her tea. This is me to just explain where our paths crossed. It sent me on a tailspin. Like I literally went to a place of I started questioning damn near everything in my life up until this point. And I was like, who am I? Like, am I who I say I am? Am I really empathetic? Do I really see people's issues? Do I really care? Or have I just been that fucking selfish? It made me start thinking about selfishness and thinking about character and thinking like that. Like there's so much that I still have to process and I still have to figure out. Like I said, therapy is needed. I need a nice objective person to just help me piece this together and figure out how I want to move forward. But ultimately, empathy, true empathy is what I feel I was lacking. But I also know I was too close to the problem. I lived in that house and my experience was very much one of privilege, meaning I had food, I had shelter, I got new shoes, I got all the CDs I wanted, I go to a nice school, I'm having all of these experiences. So I don't know what the fuck you're bitching and moaning about. These people are great. What are you talking about? They have laid me out. Meanwhile, these very people you had a different experience with and I'm not. Man, it's just, that's been tearing me up. And right now, my current theme is empathy. And if there's anything that you all can take, I can't tell you what to take from this, but if I could suggest is, are you being empathetic with people around you? Are there any connections with family, friends, or anything like that, that you can really take yourself out of the equation, put yourself in their shoes and try to see it from their perspective, because that's when real change happens. So after that night, I had a little mental breakdown with it. I started reaching out to my closest friends and they helped me process it a little bit. And so after I slept on it, the next morning, I went to my sister's room and we talked about it. And I was like, listen, I see you and I don't understand like why it took me so long. And she just like, the look she gave me was just one of just satisfaction because she finally felt seen. She was like, thank you. She's like, all I ever wanted was to be a daughter. And I wanted people to just see that the older person they were experiencing of my mother is different than what I got as a kid. I'm not saying she couldn't change. It's just that I didn't really get it. And then when I called it out, I was told I was crazy and I needed to get over it. And no, like, she never got an apology. She never got an apology. She had to just, like, she had to pick herself up and just figure it out, which is what a lot of people say. Oh, put your grown girl panties on, or your big boy pants on. You know, people say shit like that, like, get over it. It's your responsibility for your happiness. But at the same time, that's a lot of fucking pain. And if you think about an actual child being neglected and figuring out life for themselves and all the different milestones they had to encounter by themselves, and, you know, not having the proper protections, like, that's heavy. And she was just told to get over it by all of us. I mean, including me, by all of us, because none of us are really being empathetic to it. We just brush it on the rug. So finally, it was my moment to say, I see you. I'm sorry for ignoring you. I apologize for not really empathizing and feeling your pain, because that shit's fucked up. And if I really want to be a balanced individual, I need to be able to balance that the person that raised me evolved into someone who, you know, became the selfless person, but at a certain point in time, she looked out for herself and she was looking out to figure out what's best for her. And I don't want to demonize her either, because my mother/aunt wasn't a terrible person. She was an amazing person, but she was once young and made terrible decisions when she didn't know what else she could do. And there's so much more to the story. And like I said, I'm not trying to give too much, but I just want to let you know, like, what's been going on. But yada, yada, yada. Empathy. It's important, guys. It will shock you to your core when you finally see some shit for what it is after you're done romanticizing it, being disillusioned about it, and just only seeing one side. There's always multiple sides to a story, and it only helps to see all sides of the story and make decisions for ourselves. And so no more fake empathy. No more, oh yeah, I feel you. Oh, I've been there. No. Have you been there? Do you really feel me? Are you really listening to my plight? Are you really listening to what I've been through? Because I'll know that you're really listening and you really understand it when you take action. Because I wasn't taking action. Now that I understand it, I get it. And even when me and my sister aren't seeing eye to eye on some shit, I get why we're there. And it helps me process. It helps me communicate differently. It helps me navigate differently, knowing what I know versus just writing her off as just, oh, she got anger issues, or no, fuck that. She's a human and she's been through some real shit and she deserves that respect. And knowing that, I move forward. So be empathetic, guys, like true empathy. Really listen. Don't be so close to a problem that you think you know everything about it, because you don't. And sometimes it takes time. It took me 8 years. It took me 8 fucking years to see something that was there all along, but it wasn't my time to see it until now. But now that I see it, it's time to do better, because when you know better, you do better. And yeah, that's all I got. You guys prosper. Thank you so much for the love you guys have been showing me on the podcast and my Instagram page. And make sure you're still reviewing the show, sharing it with people, leaving comments. Tell me what you think. Tell me your thoughts. Show me if you have a similar story you want to share with me. Share it with me. I don't mind feedback. I don't mind hearing your stories. I mean, it's all about starting conversation and continuing conversations, and let me know your thoughts. But that's where I'm at this week. A little jumbled, but I'm figuring it out. It feels like an awakening, honestly. I feel like I've hit a new level of consciousness, because it's just causing me to not be so self-centered, not being so about self that I don't really see the problems of others who are affected by the things I'm affected of. And yeah, but have a great week, and I'll talk to you guys next time.